The restaurant smelled like expensive cologne and older money, the kind that didn't need to announce itself. I moved between tables with practiced invisibility, refilling water glasses and clearing plates while the city's elite pretended I didn't exist. My feet ached in my worn sneakers, hidden beneath black slacks that had seen better days. The fabric was thin at the knees, but no one ever looked that closely at the help. I'd been working at Dionysus for 3 months, long enough to recognize the regulars and understand the unspoken hierarchy. The marble floors gleamed under crystal chandeliers, reflecting fragments of conversation and laughter that never included people like me. I was a ghost in their world, visible only when summoned by a raised finger or empty glass. Tonight felt different, though. There was a tension in the air, thick as the August humidity that clung to my skin beneath my crisp white shirt. The other servers moved with unusual precision, their smiles tighter, their movements more calculated. Even Marco, our manager, kept adjusting his tie and checking his watch. "Table 7, he whispered to me as I passed the bar. "When they arrive, let Maria handle it." I nodded, though curiosity prickled at the base of my spine. In 3 months, I'd never been told to avoid a table. We fought for the good ones, the generous tippers, the easy customers. But I didn't ask questions. Girls like me, working our way through community college with rent due and a mother's medical bills piling up, we didn't ask questions. The entrance doors opened with a whisper of hydraulics, and the restaurant shifted. It was subtle. A collective intake of breath, a straightening of postures, eyes that suddenly found their plates fascinating. I turned from the bar, a tray of dirty glasses balanced on my hip, and saw them. 3 men in dark suits moved through the entrance like shadows given form. But it was the man in the center who commanded the space, who seemed to pull the very air toward him. He was tall, his black suit tailored to perfection, the kind of fit that cost more than my yearly tuition. Dark hair, touched with silver at the temples, swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, all sharp angles and controlled power. He moved differently than the other patrons. Each step was deliberate, measured. His dark eyes scanned the room with the precision of someone who cataloged threats the way other people counted sheep. The 2 men flanking him, clearly security, their jackets cut to hide shoulder holsters, maintained a careful distance, close enough to intervene, far enough to give him space. Marco materialized at my elbow, his breath quick. "That's Dante Caruso," he hissed. "Don't stare." But I was already looking away, my heart doing something strange in my chest. I'd heard the name, of course. Everyone in the city knew it, whispered in the same breath as words like empire and untouchable. The Caruso family didn't just own businesses. They owned the shadows between them. They were seated at table 7, the corner booth with the best view of both entrances. I watched Maria approach them, her usual confidence replaced with something that looked like fear wearing a smile. She spoke, her lips moving rapidly, but Dante Caruso didn't respond. His eyes tracked her words, his expression unchanging, carved from stone. One of his men leaned in, speaking into his ear. Dante's gaze shifted to the man, and he signed something with his hands, quick, fluid movements that carried the weight of commands. The security nodded and stood, walking toward Marco. "He needs someone who knows sign language," the guard said, his voice carrying the kind of authority that didn't ask, it informed. "The blonde server. She knows it?" Marco's face went pale. "Maria? No, she doesn't." "Then find someone who does." The restaurant fell into that peculiar silence that comes from people pretending not to eavesdrop while hanging on every word. Marco looked around desperately, his eyes landing on each server in turn. They all found reasons to be busy, to look away, to suddenly remember urgent tasks in the kitchen. Something in my chest twisted. I'd spent my whole life being invisible, being overlooked, being the girl who didn't matter. I'd watched my mother fade into the background of her own life, too tired from double shifts to fight for recognition. I'd promised myself I'd be different, that I'd be brave when it counted. This probably didn't count. This was probably the stupidest idea I'd ever had. "I know sign language," I heard myself say. The words fell into the silence like stones into still water. Every head turned toward me. Marco's expression cycled through surprise, horror, and something that might have been resignation. The security guard's eyes narrowed, assessing me like I was a potential threat despite my worn shoes, and the coffee stain on my apron I'd tried and failed to scrub out. You? His skepticism was evident. My younger brother is deaf, I said, meeting his gaze even as my pulse hammered in my throat. I've been signing since I was 8. It wasn't entirely true. My brother, Tommy, had died when I was 15, taken by the same car accident that had left my mother with chronic pain and mounting debt. But the skills remained. Muscle memory in my fingers, a language I still practiced alone in my apartment, signing to ghosts. The guard studied me for a long moment, then turned and walked back to the table. He leaned down, signing to Dante Caruso. I was too far away to read the words, but I saw Dante's eyes shift, finding me across the crowded restaurant. The impact of his gaze was physical. Dark eyes, almost black in the low light, locked onto mine with an intensity that made my breath catch. He didn't look away, didn't blink, just studied me with the kind of focus that suggested he could see through my carefully constructed armor to the scared girl beneath. Then he signed something. One hand, a simple gesture. Come. Marco's hand gripped my elbow. Ella, you don't have to. It's fine, I interrupted, though my voice shook slightly. It's just taking an order. I set down my tray of dirty glasses and walked toward table 7. Each step felt like moving through water, resistance building with every inch closer. The other diners watched from their periphery, their conversations muted, waiting to see what would happen to the foolish girl who'd volunteered for something everyone else had the sense to avoid. Up close, Dante Caruso was even more overwhelming. He sat with perfect posture, his hands resting on the white tablecloth, rings catching the light. One signet, one plain band of dark metal. The scent of him reached me first. Cedar and something darker. Expensive cologne mixed with gun oil and danger. His security had moved to adjacent tables, creating a buffer zone. We were alone in the bubble of his presence, and I felt the weight of it pressing against my skin. I pulled out my order pad with trembling fingers, then set it aside. No point pretending this was normal. Instead, I signed, my hands suddenly steady in the familiar language. Good evening. What can I get for you? Something flickered in his dark eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. He signed back, his movements precise, elegant despite the clear power in his hands. You weren't lying. No, sir. Don't call me sir. His signing carried an edge of command even in silence. You know who I am? I hesitated, then nodded. Lying seemed like a spectacularly bad idea. Then you know people are afraid of me. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. Yes. Are you afraid? The honest answer was yes. I was terrified. My hands wanted to shake, my pulse was racing, and every instinct screamed at me to run. But there was something else beneath the fear. A strange pull, a curiosity about the man who commanded such dread while sitting in silence. A little, I signed honestly. But you still need to eat. The corner of his mouth moved, not quite a smile, but close. It transformed his face for a heartbeat, made him look less like a carved statue and more like a man. Practical, he signed. What's your name? Ella. Ella. He shaped my name with his hands like he was testing the feel of it. How long have you been signing? 12 years. Why? I could have lied. Should have lied. Given him some sanitized version that kept my grief private. But something about the directness of his question, the way he looked at me like I was actually visible, pulled the truth from me. My brother was deaf. He died 7 years ago. His expression didn't change, but his hands stilled for a moment. Then, I'm sorry. 2 simple signs, but they carried weight. I nodded, not trusting my hands to stay steady. The Brassato al Barolo, he signed, shifting back to business. And tell your chef if he burns it like he did last month, I'll buy this restaurant just to fire him. Despite myself, I almost smiled. I'll make sure he knows. You smile when you're nervous, he observed, his dark eyes tracking my face. Your left hand trembles slightly, but your right stays steady. You learned to sign with someone you loved. The accuracy of his observation unsettled me. I'd never noticed the tremor, but he was right. My left hand, the one I'd used to hold Tommy's while we practiced, always shook when emotions ran high. I should place your order, I signed, needing distance from those penetrating eyes. Wait. His hand moved sharply. A command. Tomorrow night. Come back. I work tomorrow. I know. He pulled a card from his jacket pocket, slid it across the table. Heavy stock, embossed lettering. Just a name and a phone number. If you need anything. Anything at all. I stared at the card, not touching it. Accepting it felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. Why? I signed. Because you're the first person in 5 years who's looked at me and seen someone who needs to eat. His hands moved with brutal honesty. Everyone else sees a monster. Are you? The question left my hands before I could stop it. A monster? He held my gaze for a long moment, and I saw something dark and vast in those eyes. Depths I couldn't begin to fathom. Yes, he signed simply. But even monsters appreciate kindness. I picked up the card with numb fingers, slipped it into my apron pocket where it burned against my hip like a brand. Then I turned and walked toward the kitchen on legs that barely held me, feeling his eyes track every step. Marco met me at the kitchen door, his face ashen. What did he say to you? He ordered the brasato al barolo. I managed, my voice strange in my own ears after so much silence. And he said not to burn it. I didn't mention the card. Didn't mention the way my heart was still racing, or the feeling that I'd just made a choice that would change everything, though I couldn't yet see how. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I served other tables, smiled at other customers, collected tips and cleared plates. But I felt the weight of Dante Caruso's presence like gravity, pulling at me even across the room. Several times I caught him watching me, his expression unreadable, his hands still on the table. When he finally left, the restaurant seemed to exhale. Conversations resumed their normal volume. Marco stopped checking his watch every 30 seconds, but I felt his absence like a missing tooth, my tongue constantly returning to the empty space. I finished my shift at midnight, my feet screaming in protest as I changed from my work shoes to my sneakers in the employee locker room. The card was still in my apron pocket. I pulled it out, studying the embossed letters in the fluorescent light. Dante Caruso, and a phone number. Nothing else. No address, no title, no explanation. I should throw it away. Should forget this night ever happened and go back to being invisible, safe in my anonymity. I had enough problems without adding connection to the city's most dangerous man to the list. Instead, I slipped the card into my wallet, next to the photo of Tommy making bunny ears behind my head at his 8th birthday party, both of us grinning at the camera like we had all the time in the world. Outside, the August night wrapped around me like a warm blanket. The subway station was 2 blocks away, the platform mostly empty at this hour. I clutched my purse and kept my head down, following the same route I'd taken every night for 3 months. I didn't see the man following me until he was already too close. The footsteps behind me were too deliberate to be coincidence. I'd learned to read the rhythm of the city, the rushed commuters, the leisurely tourists, the predators who moved with purpose. These steps had purpose. My hand tightened on my purse strap as I quickened my pace. The subway entrance glowed ahead, a beacon of fluorescent safety. Just 1 more block, 50 more steps. I counted them in my head, the same way I'd counted Tommy's heartbeats in the hospital, desperate arithmetic that never changed the outcome. Ella. The voice cut through the humid air, unfamiliar and sharp. I didn't stop, didn't turn. My mother's warnings echoed in my head. Never acknowledge them. Never let them know you're afraid. Ella Monroe. Closer now. I know you can hear me. The use of my full name froze me mid-step. Nobody at the restaurant knew my last name except Marco, and he'd never give it out. The personnel file was locked in his office, which meant I turned. The man was average height, average build, with the kind of face that disappeared in crowds. Brown hair, brown eyes, a suit that cost more than my monthly rent but lacked the tailored perfection of Dante's. He held his hands visible, empty, but something in his smile made my stomach clench. "Who are you?" I demanded, voice steadier than I felt. "A friend." He took a step closer. I took one back. "I saw you talking to Dante Caruso tonight. Quite the conversation for a waitress. I took his order, that's my job. In sign language. How convenient. His smile widened, and I saw the calculation behind it. You know what he is, don't you? What his family does? I know I need to catch my train. I turned again, but his next words stopped me. Your mother's medical bills are substantial. Mount Sinai Hospital, Dr. Patterson. The collection notices must be piling up. Ice flooded my veins. How do you... I know a lot of things, Ella. I know you're 3 months behind on rent. I know you're taking 12 credits at community college because that's all you can afford. I know you eat ramen 4 nights a week and skip lunch most days. He pulled a business card from his pocket, held it out. I also know how to make those problems disappear. I didn't take the card. What do you want? Information. About Dante Caruso, his routines, his conversations, who he meets with. His voice was casual, like he was asking for the time. You have access now. He gave you his card. He'll trust you eventually. All I need is for you to pay attention. Remember what you see. You want me to spy on him? The words tasted like ash. I want you to survive. You think working yourself to death for minimum wage and tips is going to save your mother? She needs surgery, Ella. Real surgery. Not the pain management they're giving her because it's all Medicaid will cover. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I'm offering you a way out. A way to actually help her. My throat tightened. He was right about all of it. The bills, the collection notices, the way I woke up at 3 a.m. calculating how many double shifts I'd need to keep the lights on. My mother's pain had become white noise in my life. Background radiation I'd learned to ignore because acknowledging it meant acknowledging I couldn't fix it. Who are you? I asked again. Someone who wants to see Dante Caruso pay for his crimes. He finally lowered the card. Think about it. You have my number if you change your mind. He walked away, disappearing into the flow of pedestrians like he'd never been there at all. But the card remained in my hand, and the knowledge of my private struggles remained exposed, violated. I made it to the subway on autopilot, collapsed into a plastic seat in the empty car. My hands shook as I pulled out both cards, the heavy embossed one from Dante, the cheap business card from the stranger. Michael Torino. Private investigator. I should call the police, report the threat, the stalking, the attempt at blackmail. But what would I even say? A man offered me money to watch someone? He hadn't threatened me, hadn't touched me. He'd just laid bare the mathematics of my desperation and offered a solution. The train rocked through the tunnel, and I closed my eyes, seeing Dante's hands forming words in the dim restaurant light. Even monsters appreciate kindness. He'd called himself a monster, claimed it openly, no pretense of innocence. But he'd also apologized for Tommy's death, with a sincerity that had cracked something in my chest. I threw Michael Torino's card in the trash can outside my apartment building. Whatever he was offering, whatever game he was playing, I wanted no part of it. I had enough darkness in my life without adding betrayal to the list. My studio apartment greeted me with familiar shabbiness, water-stained ceiling, radiator that clanked like a dying ghost, the fold-out couch that served as my bed. But it was mine, paid for with my sweat and aching feet, and that meant something. I fell asleep with Dante's card on my nightstand, its presence a question I wasn't ready to answer. The next night, I arrived at Dionysus 15 minutes early, a knot of anticipation tight in my stomach. Marco raised an eyebrow when he saw me but said nothing, just handed me my section assignments. Table 7 wasn't on my list. Maria has that section tonight, he said, not meeting my eyes. Probably for the best. Probably. Definitely. I should have been relieved. Instead, I felt the keen edge of disappointment. The dinner rush started at 6. I moved through my tables with mechanical efficiency, smiling at the right moments, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, being perfectly invisible once again. But my eyes kept drifting to table 7, empty and waiting. He arrived at 7:30. The same entrance, the same 2 security guards, the same shift in the restaurant's atmosphere. But this time, when Dante's dark eyes scanned the room, they found me immediately, held. Something passed between us across the crowded space, acknowledgement, recognition, something I didn't have words for. Maria approached their table with a tray of water glasses. I watched her smile, watched her speak, watched Dante's expression remain impassive. Then I saw his hand move, signing something. Maria's smile faltered. She nodded, set down the glasses, and walked directly toward me. "He wants you," she hissed, her professional mask slipping. "Table 7. He asked for you specifically." My heart kicked against my ribs. "What did you tell him?" "That you're busy with your own section. He said he'd wait." She thrust her order pad at me. "Marco's going to kill me, but I'm not arguing with Dante Caruso. You take them. I'll cover your tables." We switched sections without Marco noticing. Absorbed as he was in managing the chaos of a Saturday night, I approached table 7 with my pulse in my throat, the card in my wallet suddenly heavy against my hip. Dante watched me approach. Tonight he wore charcoal gray, the suit pristine. His dark hair swept back to reveal the sharp angles of his face. Up close, I could see the slight scar along his jaw, the way his eyes tracked movement with predatory precision. I pulled out my order pad, then set it aside. Signed instead, "Good evening." "You came back," he signed, and I couldn't read his expression. "I work here. You could have requested a different section, different shift." His hands moved with certainty. "You didn't." He was right. I could have. Should have. The smart thing would be to stay far away from Dante Caruso and his dark eyes, and the way he made me feel visible in a way that was both terrifying and intoxicating. "You said you wanted me to come back." I signed before I could reconsider. "I did." He leaned back slightly, studying me. "Do you know why?" "No. Because you treated me like a person. Not a king, not a threat, just someone who needed to eat." He paused, his next sign slower, more careful. "It's rare. And valuable. I'm just a waitress. You're not just anything." His correction was sharp. What did the man want last night? The question hit me like cold water. I must have shown my shock because his expression hardened. "You were followed from here. A man in a brown suit spoke to you for approximately 4 minutes outside the subway entrance on 3rd Street. My people observed but didn't interfere. I'm asking now, what did he want?" My hands felt numb. He'd had me followed, had people watching me, the violation of it mixed with something else. A twisted kind of protection I didn't ask for but apparently had anyway. "How did you—" I started, but he cut me off. "I protect what's mine. Answer the question." "I'm not yours." I signed, anger giving me courage. "You became mine the moment you approached this table. No arrogance in the statement, just fact." Now tell me what he wanted. I should have lied, should have walked away, quit my job, disappeared into the city's anonymous masses. Instead, I told him the truth, my hands shaping words that felt like betrayal, even though I'd already decided against Michael Torino's offer. "He wanted me to spy on you, said he'd pay off my mother's medical bills if I reported on your movements, your meetings." Dante's expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes, a darkness that made my breath catch. "And you said?" "No." I threw away his card. "Why?" The question seemed genuine. He really wanted to know why I'd turned down money I desperately needed to avoid betraying a man I didn't know. "Because I don't sell people," I signed simply. "Not even monsters who appreciate kindness." The corner of his mouth moved again, that almost smile that transformed him. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a phone, typed something quickly, then set it aside. "Michael Torino," he signed. "Private investigator. Works for the Moretti family. They're trying to find leverage against me." He paused. "He'll be taken care of." My stomach dropped. Taken care of could mean anything, and I had a feeling I didn't want to know the details. "I don't want anyone hurt because of me." I signed quickly. "He threatened you, invaded your privacy, tried to manipulate you." Dante's hands moved with controlled fury. "That has consequences. Please." I didn't know why I was pleading for a man who'd stalked me, but the thought of violence on my behalf made my skin crawl. Just make him stop. "That's enough." Dante studied me for a long moment, his dark eyes unreadable. Then he pulled out his phone again, typed something different. When he looked up, his expression had softened fractionally. "He'll be convinced to leave the city, no permanent damage." His next signs came slower. "You're too soft for this world, Ella." "Maybe," I signed. But I'm still here. Yes, you are. He gestured to the empty seat across from him. Sit, I'm working. I own 40% of this restaurant. Sit. The revelation shouldn't have surprised me, but it did. Of course he owned part of Dionysus. Men like Dante Caruso owned pieces of everything. Invisible empires built on silence and power. I glanced around. Marco was occupied with a difficult customer. The other servers were deliberately not looking our way. I slid into the booth across from Dante, acutely aware of his security watching from nearby tables, their eyes tracking every movement. Your mother's medical bills, he signed. Mount Sinai. Dr. Patterson. Chronic pain from a car accident 7 years ago. I went still. How much do you know? Everything. No apology in the statement. Your brother died in the same accident. Your father left 6 months later. You've been working 2 jobs since you were 16. Put yourself through community college. Business administration major. 3.7 GPA despite working 60 hours a week. Hearing my life summarized in his hands felt surreal, invasive, like being dissected under bright lights. Why? I signed, my hands shaking now. Why do you care? Because you're interesting. He leaned forward slightly, and I caught his scent again, cedar and danger and something darker. Because you looked at me and saw past the surface. Because you're kind even when kindness costs you. You don't know me. I know enough. His next signs came with absolute certainty. I'm going to make you an offer. You can refuse. But hear me first. My heart hammered. Every instinct screamed at me to run. But I couldn't move. Pinned by those dark eyes. I need someone I can trust. Someone who can move in both worlds. Mine and theirs. He gestured vaguely toward the other diners. Someone who understands sign language. Who's invisible to the people who matter. Someone smart enough to handle delicate situations. You want me to work for you, I signed. Understanding dawning. I want you to be mine, he corrected. My translator. My eyes and ears. You'll be compensated. In places I can't go. Generously. Your mother's bills paid. Your tuition covered. A better apartment. In exchange for what? Your loyalty? Your discretion? Your time? He paused. And eventually, if you're willing, more than that. The last part sent heat through my chest. Confusing and dangerous. I don't understand. I signed. Though I was afraid I did. I think you do. His eyes held mine. I'm a patient man, Ella. I can wait for you to see what I already know. Which is? That you belong with me. He gestured between us. Was inevitable from the moment you decided not to be afraid. I stood abruptly, the booth suddenly suffocating. This is insane. You don't know me. I don't know you. Yesterday was the first time we met. Time is irrelevant. He remained seated, calm in the face of my panic. But I won't force you. Think about it. The offer stands. And if I say no, then you say no. His signs were gentle now. I'm not the monster everyone thinks I am, Ella. Not with you. But you are with everyone else, yes. No hesitation. Which is why I can protect you. Why I can give you the life you deserve instead of the one you're surviving. I grabbed my order pad, needing something normal to hold on to. I need to get back to work. Of course. He picked up the menu, the conversation apparently over. I'll have the osso buco tonight. And Ella? I paused, looked back. Be careful walking home. Michael Torino might be handled, but the Moretti family has other resources. Stay in well-lit areas. Take cabs when possible. His expression darkened. Or accept my offer, and you'll have a driver. Your choice. I walked away on numb legs, my mind spinning. The rest of the night passed in a haze. I served Dante's osso buco, watched him eat in silence while his security maintained their vigilant watch. He left a $1,000 tip on a $60 meal, and a note written in elegant script. My offer expires in 1 week. Choose wisely. I stared at the money, at the note, at the impossible choice being laid before me. A week ago, my biggest problem was making rent. Now I was being courted by a mob boss who looked at me like I was something precious and terrifying all at once. I should run. Should disappear into the anonymous safety of poverty and obscurity. Instead, I carefully folded the note, and slipped it into my wallet, next to his card, next to Tommy's photo. 1 week. 7 days to decide if I was brave enough, or foolish enough, to step into Dante Caruso's dark and glittering world. The week stretched before me like a tightrope, each day a step closer to a decision I wasn't ready to make. I went through the motions, classes in the morning, Dionysus at night, visiting my mother on Wednesday afternoon like I did every week. But my mind stayed fractured, split between the safe poverty I knew and the dangerous luxury Dante offered. My mother looked smaller every time I saw her, curled in her worn recliner with a heating pad pressed against her lower back. The apartment smelled like menthol and old coffee, the afternoon light filtering through yellowed curtains to paint everything in sepia tones. "You look tired, baby," she said, her voice raspy from the pain medication that never quite worked. "Are you sleeping?" "I'm fine, Mom." I busied myself in her kitchen, washing the dishes she'd let pile up, restocking her pill organizer. The prescription bottles lined the counter like soldiers: hydrocodone, gabapentin, muscle relaxers that left her fuzzy and distant. "How's the pain today?" "Same as always." She shifted, wincing. "Dr. Patterson wants to try a new physical therapy protocol, but insurance won't cover it. Says it's experimental." I gripped the edge of the sink, staring at my distorted reflection in the faucet. Insurance wouldn't cover it. The story of our lives, written in denied claims and mounting debt. "I'll figure something out," I said, the lie familiar on my tongue. "Ella, no. You're already working yourself to death. I won't have you." I said I'll figure it out. The sharpness in my voice silenced her. I immediately regretted it, but the weight of Dante's offer pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. One signature, one decision, and my mother could have real treatment. Real surgery. A chance at a life without constant pain. All it would cost was my safety, my autonomy, my soul. Small price, really. I stayed until she fell asleep, her breathing evening out as the medication kicked in. Then I took the bus back to my apartment, Dante's note burning a hole in my pocket. Thursday night, Dante didn't come to the restaurant. I told myself I was relieved, but the disappointment sat heavy in my stomach. Friday, the same. By Saturday, I'd convinced myself he'd moved on, found someone else to be his translator, his eyes and ears. Then Sunday arrived. I wasn't scheduled to work, had planned to spend the day studying for my accounting midterm, but at 10 a.m., my phone rang. An unknown number with a local area code. "Hello?" Silence. Then a text came through from the same number. "This is Dante. I'm sending a car for you. Noon. Wear something comfortable." My fingers trembled as I typed back. I didn't agree to anything. The response was immediate. "I know. This isn't work. This is a date. You can say no." I stared at the words for a full minute. A date. Dante Caruso was asking me on a date via text message because he couldn't call, couldn't speak, could only communicate through the written word or sign language. I should say no. Should text back a polite refusal and block the number. Instead, I wrote, "Where?" "Somewhere quiet. Somewhere we can talk. Trust me." Trust him. The mob boss who'd had me investigated, who'd threatened Michael Torino, who looked at me like I was simultaneously fragile and essential. Trust him. Okay, I typed before I could reconsider. Noon. I changed outfits 4 times before settling on jeans and a simple green sweater, comfortable, like he'd requested, but nice enough that I didn't feel completely outclassed. At 11:55, a black Mercedes with tinted windows pulled up outside my building. The driver was one of Dante's security from the restaurant, the older one with gray at his temples and assessing eyes. He opened the back door without a word, and I slid into leather seats that probably cost more than my entire apartment. We drove north, out of the city and into the countryside. Trees replaced buildings, the September air carrying the first hints of autumn. I watched the landscape change through tinted windows, my nerves building with every mile. 40 minutes later, we turned down a private road lined with maples. At the end sat a house. No, an estate. Stone and glass and modern angles, perched on a hillside with views of the valley below. It was beautiful in a severe way, like Dante himself. The driver opened my door. He's waiting inside. The entry hall was all marble and clean lines, artwork on the walls that I suspected was original. My sneakers squeaked on the polished floor, the sound echoing in the vast space. Dante appeared at the top of the staircase. He wore dark jeans and a black Henley, casual clothes that somehow made him more intimidating, rather than less. Without the armor of his suits, I could see the lean muscle of his frame, the way he moved with predatory grace. He descended the stairs and signed. You came. You sent a very persistent driver. I sent a very expensive driver, that almost smile again. Come. I made lunch. He'd made lunch. The image of Dante Caruso in a kitchen, cooking, was so incongruous that I almost laughed. He must have read my expression because his signs turned wry. I'm not completely helpless. I lived alone for years before I could afford staff. He led me through the house to a kitchen that belonged in a magazine, all stainless steel and granite, windows overlooking a garden in its autumn glory. On the island sat 2 place settings and a spread of Italian food, fresh pasta, salad, bread still warm from the oven, and tiramisu for dessert. I didn't know what you liked, he signed, something almost uncertain in the gesture. So I made everything. The vulnerability in that admission cracked something in my chest. This powerful, dangerous man had cooked an entire feast because he didn't know my preferences and wanted to give me options. It's perfect, I signed, and meant it. We sat across from each other, and for a while we just ate. The pasta was incredible, perfectly al dente with a sauce that spoke of hours of simmering. He watched me take the first bite, and when I closed my eyes in appreciation, his expression softened. My grandmother's recipe, he signed when I looked at him. She taught me before she died. Said a man who can't feed himself is at the mercy of others. She sounds wise. She was. He paused, his hands stilling. She was also the only person who never treated my deafness like a tragedy. She learned sign language, taught the whole family, made sure I knew I wasn't less than anyone. I set down my fork. How long have you been deaf? Since birth. Genetic. My father saw it as weakness, proof I wasn't fit to lead. His signs turned harsh. He was wrong. Obviously. I gestured around the kitchen, the implication clear. He'd built an empire despite, or perhaps because of, what others saw as limitation. Tell me about your brother, he signed, changing the subject. The request caught me off guard. Most people avoided mentioning Tommy, treating his death like a conversational landmine. What do you want to know? Everything. What made him laugh? What he dreamed about? How you signed together? So I told him. About Tommy's obsession with dinosaurs. His collection of plastic T-Rexes that lined our shared bedroom windowsill. About how we'd developed our own signs for things that didn't have official ones. Our secret language within a language. About the night of the accident, the drunk driver who'd run a red light. The way Tommy had signed I love you in the ambulance before the machine started screaming. My hands shook through the telling, and I had to pause several times to collect myself. Dante didn't rush me, didn't offer empty platitudes. He just watched with those dark eyes, absorbing my grief like it was something precious. When I finished, he reached across the table and took my hands in his. The first time he'd touched me, his palms were warm, calloused in unexpected places, and his grip was gentle, despite the obvious strength in his fingers. Thank you for telling me, he signed when he released me, his movements slow and sincere. He would be proud of who you've become. Tears burned behind my eyes. I blinked them back, reaching for my water glass. Why am I here, Dante? I signed when I trusted my hands again. Really here. This isn't about the job offer. No, he agreed. It's not. Then what? He stood, came around the island to my side. Up close, I could see the silver threading through his dark hair, the fine lines at the corners of his eyes. He was older than I'd initially thought. Maybe late 30s, early 40s. I'm going to tell you something, he signed. And you're going to think I'm insane. I already think that. His mouth curved into a real smile this time, transforming his severe features into something almost boyish. Then the smile faded, replaced by an intensity that made my breath catch. I've been deaf my entire life, he signed. I've learned to read people better than anyone who can hear. Body language, micro-expressions, the things people try to hide. It's how I've survived. How I've built what I have. I nodded, not sure where this was going. When you walked toward my table that first night, I read you like a book. Saw your fear, your courage, your desperation. But I also saw something else. He paused, his hands hovering between us. I saw someone who could see me. Really see me. Not the empire or the reputation or the danger. Just me. Dante, let me finish. His signs were gentle but firm. I've had women throw themselves at me for years. Beautiful women, sophisticated women, women who want the power or the money or the thrill of danger. I've never wanted any of them. My heart was pounding now, a rabbit trying to escape my ribs. But you, he continued, his dark eyes locked on mine. You with your worn shoes and coffee-stained apron, treating me like I was just someone who needed to eat. You didn't want anything from me, didn't try to impress me. You were just kind. That's not a reason to... I started, but I didn't know how to finish. To want you? He stepped closer, and I could feel the heat of him, smell cedar and danger. To need you? You're right. It's not rational. It's not safe. But it's true. You don't know me, I signed, echoing my earlier protest. I know you work yourself to exhaustion for a mother who can barely afford her medication. I know you honor your dead brother by keeping his language alive in your hands. I know you're studying business administration because you want to open your own restaurant someday. I know you skip meals so you can save money, but you always tip the homeless man who sits outside your subway stop. Each statement hit like a physical blow. He really had investigated everything. That's stalking, I signed, anger, and something else warring in my chest. That's protection. No apology in the correction. The moment you approached my table, you became visible. And in my world, visibility is dangerous. I needed to know who you were, if you were a threat, if you could be trusted, and you're none of those things. He raised his hands slowly, giving me time to pull away, and cupped my face. His palms were warm against my cheeks, his touch impossibly gentle for a man who commanded an empire of violence. You're just Ella. Brave, kind, stubborn Ella, who throws away cards from private investigators and defends men who call themselves monsters. I should go, I signed, but I didn't move, trapped in the gravity of his touch. You should, he agreed, but you won't. Because you feel it too, this pull between us, this inevitability. He was right, and I hated him for it. I did feel it, had felt it from the moment our eyes met across the restaurant, a connection I couldn't explain and didn't want to examine. This is crazy, I signed against his palms. You're dangerous. Your world is dangerous. I would never let anything hurt you, he interrupted, his signs fierce despite his gentle touch. Never. You would be protected, cherished, given everything you've ever wanted. I don't want things. Then what do you want? The question hung between us, demanding honesty. What did I want? Safety? Security? A life where I didn't wake up calculating which bill to pay and which to let slide? Or did I want something more, something reckless and terrifying and real? I want to stop being invisible, I signed finally, the truth scraping out of me. I want to matter. You matter to me. His thumbs brushed my cheekbones. A feather-light touch that sent shivers down my spine. You've mattered since the moment you chose courage over fear. I'm still afraid. Good. His signs were approving. Fear keeps you smart, but don't let it keep you from living. He dropped his hands and stepped back, giving me space to breathe. My face felt cold where his touch had been. I'm not asking you to decide everything today, he signed. Just agree to see me again. Let me show you what your life could be. No obligations, no strings, just possibility. And the job offer? Separate. If you want to work for me, we'll discuss terms. But this, he gestured between us, this has nothing to do with business. What does it have to do with? Us. Simple. Direct. Terrifying. I looked around the kitchen, at the feast he'd prepared, at this glimpse into a life I'd never imagined for myself. Then I looked at him, this dangerous, powerful man who somehow made me feel seen for the first time since Tommy died. One more date. I signed. My decision made before I fully understood it. But I need time to think about everything else. Take all the time you need. He pulled out his phone, typed something. But while you're thinking, your mother's medical bills have been paid. All of them. My stomach dropped. What? No. I didn't agree. Consider it a gift. No strings, no obligations. His expression was implacable. I have more money than I could spend in 10 lifetimes, Ella. Your mother's surgery costs less than I spend on wine in a month. Let me do this. That's not... You can't just... I already did. He showed me his phone screen, the confirmation of a payment to Mount Sinai Hospital. $247,000. Paid in full. The number made my head spin. He'd just erased years of debt with a few taps on a screen, like it was nothing. Why? My hands trembled with emotion I couldn't name. Gratitude, fury, fear, something dangerously close to hope. Because I can. Because you matter. Because I'm tired of watching you destroy yourself trying to save everyone while no one saves you. He pocketed his phone. Let me be the one who saves you, Ella. Let me give you the life you deserve. Tears spilled over before I could stop them. Hot tracks down my cheeks. I never cried. Had trained myself out of it years ago because tears didn't pay bills or ease pain or bring back the dead. But standing in Dante Caruso's kitchen, faced with a kindness I didn't know how to accept, I broke. He pulled me into his arms and I let him. Let myself collapse against his chest while he held me with a tenderness that contradicted everything I knew about him. His heart beat steady under my ear, and his hands moved in slow circles on my back. Comfort, in a language beyond words. When the storm passed, I pulled back, wiping at my face with embarrassed hands. Sorry, I signed. I don't apologize. His signs were gentle. You're allowed to feel things. I don't know how to accept this, any of this. Then learn. He brushed a tear from my cheek with his thumb. I'm a patient teacher. Despite everything, I almost smiled. Is that what this is? Teaching? Among other things. His eyes held promises I wasn't ready to examine. Come, let me show you the rest of the house. He led me through rooms that spoke of wealth I couldn't fathom, a library with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a gym that belonged in a professional training facility, a music room with instruments I didn't recognize. But it was the office that stopped me. One wall was covered in photographs, not of Dante, but of other people. Families, children, elderly couples. Each photo had a small plaque beneath it with names and dates. What is this? I signed. People I've helped. His expression was unreadable. Families whose businesses were saved from predatory loans. Children whose medical treatments I funded. Elderly people whose pensions I protected when corporations tried to steal them. I moved closer, reading the plaques. Stories of intervention, of power used for protection rather than destruction. I don't understand. I signed. Everyone says you're a monster, a criminal, dangerous. He finished for me. I'm all of those things, Ella. I've done terrible things to terrible people. But I've also done this. He gestured at the wall. The world isn't black and white. I'm not a hero. But I'm not only a villain either. Why show me this? Because I want you to see all of me, the darkness and the light, and then decide if you can accept both. I studied the photographs, the evidence of complexity I hadn't expected. Dante Caruso, mob boss and secret philanthropist, monster and savior. I need to go home, I signed, suddenly overwhelmed. I need to think. Of course. He didn't argue. Didn't try to convince me to stay. Just led me back through the house to where his driver waited. At the car, he took my hand one more time. Thursday. He signed. Dinner. Somewhere public if it makes you feel safer. Okay. I agreed. Because apparently I'd lost my mind. And Ella? He waited until I met his eyes. Thank you for giving me a chance. The drive back to the city passed in a blur. My mother's bills were paid. Dante Caruso wanted to court me. My entire life had shifted on its axis in the span of a few hours. When I got home, I found a package waiting outside my door. Inside was a new phone, top of the line, already programmed with Dante's number and his security team's contacts, and a note in his elegant script, so you never have to be afraid walking home alone. The phone has a panic button. Press it, and my people will come. Always. I sat on my fold-out couch, holding the phone, staring at my shabby apartment with new eyes. In 1 week, Dante Caruso had seen all of me, the poverty, the struggle, the grief, and instead of looking away like everyone else, he'd stepped closer. And God help me, I wanted to let him. Thursday arrived wrapped in autumn rain, the kind that turned the city gray and made everyone huddle deeper into their coats. I stood in front of my closet, if the narrow alcove with a hanging rod could be called that, and faced the reality that I owned nothing appropriate for dinner with Dante Caruso. My work uniform hung on one end, my 3 pairs of jeans on the other, and between them a collection of sweaters and discount store blouses that had seen better days. Nothing that said, I'm going to dinner with a mob boss who paid my mother's medical bills and keeps looking at me like I'm something precious. The new phone buzzed on my nightstand. A text from Dante. A package will arrive in 1 hour. Open it. I texted back. I can dress myself. I know. But I want to give you this. Let me. The package arrived exactly 60 minutes later, delivered by a professional courier in a black suit. Inside the discreet garment bag was a dress the color of deep wine, silk that whispered against my fingers like water. The label was Italian, the kind of designer I'd only seen in magazines. It fit perfectly, because of course he knew my size. Of course he'd anticipated this. I should have been angry at the presumption. Instead, I stood in front of my bathroom mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. The dress transformed me, or maybe it just revealed what had always been there, hidden beneath exhaustion and discount clothing. My dark blonde hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, hung loose around my shoulders. My green eyes looked brighter against the wine silk. I looked like someone who belonged in Dante's world. The thought terrified me. At 7 p.m., the same black Mercedes pulled up outside. But this time, when the driver opened the door, Dante himself was waiting in the back seat. He wore a charcoal suit with a black shirt, no tie, the top button undone to reveal the hollow of his throat. His dark eyes traveled over me slowly, taking in every detail, and what I saw in his expression made heat pool low in my stomach. Beautiful, he signed simply. I knew you would be. I slid into the car, acutely aware of the silk against my skin, the subtle scent of his cologne in the enclosed space. You didn't have to buy me a dress, I wanted to. He picked up my hand, pressed his lips to my knuckles. The gesture was old-fashioned, courtly, and impossibly intimate. Let me spoil you, Ella. I have so few chances to give gifts that matter. The restaurant was in Tribeca, exclusive enough that it didn't have a sign, just a discreet address and a doorman who clearly knew Dante on sight. We were led through the main dining room to a private area in the back, a single table set for 2 beside floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the rain-slicked city. Security took positions at nearby tables, far enough to give us privacy, close enough to intervene if needed. I'd stopped being surprised by their constant presence. Dante pulled out my chair himself, a gesture of courtesy that felt genuine rather than performative. When he sat across from me, he immediately began signing. I want to know everything about you. Start with your first memory. That's a strange first date question. I signed back. We don't have time for normal. His expression was serious. I need to learn you, Ella. All of you. Start anywhere. So I did. I told him about my childhood in Queens, my father's construction business that failed during the recession, the slow dissolution of my parents' marriage under the weight of financial stress, about Tommy's diagnosis, the way it became the center of our family's universe, about the accident, the hospital vigil, the funeral where I'd signed the eulogy because speaking felt impossible. He listened with absolute focus, his dark eyes never leaving my face, his hands occasionally moving to ask questions or offer comfort. The waiter brought course after course, scallops, risotto, duck prepared 3 ways, but I barely tasted any of it, too absorbed in the conversation flowing between our hands. Your turn, I signed when I'd exhausted my history. Tell me about your family. His expression shuddered slightly. What do you want to know? Everything. Fair is fair. He leaned back, his fingers drumming once on the table, a rare display of uncertainty. Then he began to sign. My father was Vittorio Caruso. You've probably heard the name. I had. Vittorio Caruso had been a legend in organized crime, brutal and effective until a rival family's bomb had ended his reign 5 years ago. He saw my deafness as weakness. Dante continued. Tried to keep me out of the business. Said I'd be a liability. My mother disagreed. She was the one with real power. Her family had connections my father needed. She made sure I was educated, trained, prepared to lead. She sounds formidable. She was. Past tense. Cancer took her 3 years ago. By then, I'd already proven my father wrong. Being deaf isn't a weakness. It's a superpower in my world. I notice things hearing people miss. I read body language like you read books. No one can lie to me. No one? I challenged. He smiled, a real one this time. You don't lie, Ella. Your face shows everything you feel. It's one of the things I love about you. The word love hung between us. Casual but loaded with meaning. I shifted in my seat, suddenly warm. Tell me about the business. I signed, changing the subject. The legal parts. Real estate mostly. Legitimate construction. Some import, export. We own pieces of restaurants, hotels, nightclubs. The Caruso name opens doors. And the illegal parts? You don't want to know the details. Yes, I do. I leaned forward. If you want me in your life, I need to understand all of it. The darkness and the light, remember? He studied me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Protection services, gambling. Some controlled substances, though I've been phasing that out, too unpredictable. We handle problems for people who can't go to the police. Sometimes that means violence. Sometimes it means worse. Worse than violence? Information can destroy more thoroughly than bullets. His signs were matter of fact. We collect secrets, leverage, proof of indiscretions. Then we use them when necessary. Blackmail. Insurance. He didn't flinch from my assessment. The world we live in runs on power, Ella. Those who have it and those who don't. I make sure my family, my people, always have enough to survive. At what cost? Whatever it takes. No apology, no justification. Just honesty. I told you I was a monster. I meant it. I should have been repulsed. Should have stood up and walked out, called a cab, returned to my safe, poverty-stricken life. Instead, I asked, the wall of photographs in your office. How does that fit with the rest? Balance. He signed the word with both hands. Perfectly level. I was born into darkness. I've made peace with what I have to do to survive in it, but I also have power, resources, the ability to change lives. Why shouldn't I use that for good when I can? That's not how it usually works. I'm not usual. His smile was wry, in case you hadn't noticed. Despite myself, I smiled back. I noticed. The waiter brought dessert, chocolate soufflé with gold leaf, because apparently that was a thing. Dante watched me take the first bite, and the intensity of his gaze made me hyper-aware of my mouth, my tongue, the way I closed my eyes in appreciation. When I opened them, his expression had darkened with something that wasn't quite dangerous, but definitely wasn't safe. What? I signed. You. Just that. But the word carried weight. Do you have any idea what you do to me? My pulse jumped. We barely know each other. I know enough. He set down his fork, leaned forward. I know you're strong, even when you think you're breaking. I know you protect people you love with everything you have. I know you see the world in shades of gray instead of black and white, which is rare and valuable. And I know that when you smile, really smile, it feels like sunlight in places that have been dark for years. The confession stole my breath. Dante, I'm not good at this, he interrupted, his signs almost clumsy with emotion. Courtship, romance, the normal progression of relationships. My world doesn't allow for normal, so I'm just going to be honest. I want you, Ella. In my life. In my home. In my bed. I want to wake up to you and fall asleep beside you. I want to give you everything you've ever needed and things you haven't thought to want. That's not... I started, but I didn't know how to finish. Not realistic. Not possible. Not what I'd planned for my life. Tell me what you're afraid of, he signed, his dark eyes searching mine. Really afraid of. I looked away, out the window at the rain-soaked city. The truth sat heavy on my tongue, begging to be spoken, signed. I'm afraid you'll consume me, I admitted finally. That if I step into your world, I'll disappear into it. Become just another possession, another beautiful thing you own. Never. The force of his signing made me look back. You could never disappear, Ella. You're too bright, too essential. I don't want to own you. I want to give myself to you. There's a difference. Is there? In your world? In my world, yes. He reached across the table, took both my hands in his. I've owned many things. Property, businesses, people's loyalty bought with money or fear. But what I feel for you isn't ownership. It's reverence. The word hung between us, enormous and terrifying. You barely know me. I signed against his palms, my last defense. Then let me learn. His thumb stroked the inside of my wrists, finding my racing pulse. Give me time. Give me a chance to show you what we could be together. And if I can't handle your world, if I'm not strong enough... You walked up to my table when everyone else was too afraid. You threw away money you desperately needed because you won't betray people, even strangers. You've survived things that would break most people. His expression was absolutely certain. You're strong enough for anything, Ella. The question is whether you trust yourself enough to try. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at it, his expression hardening instantly. He signed something sharp to one of his security guards, who immediately stood and left the room. What's wrong? I signed. Nothing you need to worry about, but his jaw was tight. His body language shifted to something more predatory. Business. I need to make a call. I'll be right back. He kissed my hand again, then stood and moved to a corner of the room, pulling out his phone. I watched him type rapidly, his expression growing darker with each message. One of the security guards approached me, signed, Mr. Caruso asks that you wait here. Don't leave the restaurant. Is he okay? He will be. Just stay inside. The guard returned to his position, and I sat alone at the table, anxiety building in my chest. Through the window I could see Dante pacing, his phone pressed to his ear. No, not pressed, he couldn't hear. But he was reading texts, his expression thunderous. 10 minutes passed, then 20. The waiter came by nervously, refilling my water, asking if I needed anything. I shook my head, my eyes on Dante's rigid back. Finally, he returned to the table. His composure was back in place, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his hands formed signs with extra precision. A tell I was learning to read. I need to leave, he signed. Now, something's happened. What kind of something? The kind I handle personally. He stood, offered his hand. Come, I'll have someone drive you home. No. The word left my hands before I thought it through. If you're leaving, I'm coming with you. Absolutely not. His signing was sharp. It's not safe. Then make it safe. I stood, met his eyes. You said you wanted me in your life. This is your life. Show me. Ella. I'm not fragile, Dante. Stop treating me like I'll break. Something shifted in his expression. Surprise, respect, maybe even pride. He studied me for a long moment, then nodded once. Do exactly what I say. Stay close to me. Understand? Yes. He took my hand, laced his fingers through mine, and led me out of the restaurant. The Mercedes was already running, 2 additional black SUVs flanking it. Dante's security moved with military precision, surrounding us as we walked to the car. Inside, Dante immediately began typing on his phone, coordinating whatever response was needed. I watched the city blur past, heading toward the docks, toward parts of town I'd never had reason to visit. We pulled up to a warehouse, its exterior deliberately nondescript. Security exited first, scanning the area before opening our door. Dante helped me out, his hand firm on my lower back as he guided me inside. The warehouse interior had been converted into something between an office and a command center. Men in suits stood at attention, tablets and phones in hand. They all straightened when Dante entered, deference evident in their postures. In the center of the room, tied to a chair with blood running from his nose, was Michael Torino. My stomach dropped. Dante felt me tense, his hand tightening on my waist. I told you he'd be handled. He signed with one hand. This is how. Torino's eyes found me, widened with recognition and something that looked like accusation. I wanted to look away, but Dante's presence at my back kept me steady. One of Dante's men approached, began signing rapidly. I caught pieces of it. Found with surveillance equipment. Targeting you and the girl. Moretti family paying him. Dante's expression was carved from ice as he signed back, his movements too fast for me to follow. Then he turned to me. You don't need to watch this. What are you going to do? Convince him that leaving the city is in his best interest. His signs were deliberately vague. I promised you no permanent damage. I keep my promises. Dante. He cupped my face, forced me to look at him instead of Torino. This is the darkness, Ella, the part of my world that isn't romantic or exciting. This is what I do to protect what's mine. If you can't handle it, I'll have someone take you home. No judgment. But you need to decide now. I looked past him at Torino, at the blood and fear, at the evidence of Dante's power made physical. Everything in me screamed to run, to go back to my safe, simple life where violence was something that happened to other people. But then I thought of my mother's medical bills, paid in full. The wall of photographs in Dante's office, the way he'd held me while I cried, offered me reverence instead of ownership. The darkness and the light. I stepped closer to Dante, wrapped my arms around his waist, pressed my face against his chest. I'm staying. I signed against his shirt. I choose you. All of you. His arms came around me, crushing me against him with a fierceness that stole my breath. I felt him sign something to his men. Felt the room shift as they moved to execute his orders. You're sure? He signed when he pulled back enough to meet my eyes. No, I answered honestly. But I'm staying anyway. He kissed me then, finally, his lips claiming mine with a hunger that had been building since the moment we met. The kiss was possessive, consuming, a declaration of ownership I should have resisted, but instead surrendered to completely. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes were nearly black with desire and something deeper. Mine, he signed, the word absolute. Yours, I agreed, and felt the last of my resistance crumble. Behind us, I heard Torino start to plead, but I kept my eyes on Dante, on the man who was both my salvation and my damnation, and chose the fall. Dante kept his word. Michael Torino left the warehouse on his own feet, bruised and terrified but alive. I watched from Dante's side as the private investigator was escorted to a car that would take him to the airport. A one-way ticket to Seattle already purchased. A new identity waiting if he was smart enough to use it. He won't come back, one of Dante's men said aloud, signing simultaneously for his boss. The Morettis won't protect him after this failure. Dante nodded, then turned to me. His expression softened when he saw my face. Whatever he read there made him pull me close again. You're shaking, he signed. I know. No point denying it. The adrenaline was leaving my system, replaced with the full weight of what I'd just witnessed, what I'd just accepted. Let's go home, he signed, then paused. My home. Unless you want to go back to your apartment. Your home, I signed before I could reconsider. The drive back to his estate was quiet. I sat pressed against Dante's side, his arm around my shoulders, his thumb tracing circles on my bare arm. The wine-colored dress that had felt so elegant hours ago now felt like armor I was ready to shed. Inside, he led me upstairs to a bedroom that was clearly his. Masculine, minimal, all dark wood and clean lines. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the valley, now just darkness punctuated by distant lights. I'll show you to a guest room. He started to sign, but I caught his hands. I don't want a guest room. His dark eyes searched mine, making sure I meant it. Then he pulled me close and kissed me again. Slower this time, thorough and devastating. His hands found the zipper of my dress, paused in question. I nodded. The silk pulled at my feet, and I stood before him in just my underwear, feeling simultaneously vulnerable and powerful under his hungry gaze. He signed something too fast for me to catch, then switched to pulling me against him, his mouth on my neck, my collarbone, everywhere he could reach. We made it to the bed in a tangle of limbs and desperate touches. He undressed with efficient grace, revealing lean muscle and scattered scars, evidence of a life lived dangerously. I traced one with my finger, a puckered mark on his ribs that looked like a knife wound. Later, he signed when I paused. I'll tell you all of it later. Right now, I just need you. And I needed him too. Needed to feel something other than fear and uncertainty. Needed to claim this choice I'd made with my whole body. He was patient despite his obvious desire, taking time to learn what made me gasp, what made me arch against him. When we finally came together, it felt like inevitability, like every choice I'd made since approaching his table had been leading to this moment. Afterward, I lay against his chest, listening to his heartbeat, feeling his fingers trace patterns on my spine. The silence between us was comfortable now. Familiar. A language we'd learned to speak fluently. He shifted to sign. Stay. Not just tonight. Move in with me. That's fast. I signed back, but without real protest. We don't have time for slow. His expression was serious. I know what I want, Ella. I've known since the moment you looked at me and saw someone who needed to eat instead of someone to fear. I'm not playing games. I'm asking you to build a life with me. I barely know how to accept dinner. I signed, half joking, half serious. You're asking me to accept everything. Yes. No hesitation. Your apartment lease ends next month. Move in here. Finish your degree. I'll arrange for you to transfer to a better school. All expenses covered. Work if you want to, or don't. Help me with the business if you're interested, or just be here. Be mine. I'm not a possession, no. You're a partner. He sat up, pulling me with him so we faced each other. I'm building an empire, Ella, not just the criminal parts, the legitimate businesses, the real estate, the investments. I need someone I trust absolutely to help manage it. Someone smart, educated, who can move in both worlds. You want me to work for you? With me. The distinction was important, as my equal, my other half. I'm a waitress with a community college education. I signed, reality crashing back in. I'm not qualified to. You're qualified because I say you are. His signing was fierce. Because you're brilliant and quick and people underestimate you. Because you can sign and hear, which makes you invaluable. Because I trust you. You barely know me. I protested again, but the argument was getting weaker. I know enough. He pulled me into his lap, his arms around my waist. But if you need time, take it. I can wait. Just promise me you'll consider it. I looked around the bedroom, at the luxury that could be mine, at the man offering me everything I'd never thought to want. Then I thought about my studio apartment, my mother in her worn recliner, the future I'd resigned myself to, struggle and exhaustion and invisible survival. Okay, I signed. I'll move in. Trial basis. 3 months. If it doesn't work, it will work. His confidence was absolute, but fine. 3 months. Then you'll see I'm right. Despite everything, I smiled. Arrogant. Accurate. He kissed me again, softer this time. Get some sleep. Tomorrow I'll show you the rest of what being mine means. The next 3 months were a whirlwind of transformation. Dante was true to his word about everything. I transferred to Columbia, my tuition paid in full, my class schedule arranged around my new role in his organization. I learned the legitimate businesses first, the real estate holdings, the construction contracts, the import-export operations that provided legal cover for the less legal activities underneath. I became Dante's voice in meetings, his translator in negotiations, his eyes and ears in places he couldn't go. People who'd dismissed me as just another pretty girl learned quickly that I spoke for Dante Caruso, and that made me untouchable. My mother's surgery was scheduled for December. Dr. Patterson called me personally, apologetic for the delay, but optimistic about her prognosis. She'd have real relief for the first time in 7 years. When I visited to tell her, she cried, partly from joy, partly from fear of what I'd done to make it possible. "Ella, baby," she said, gripping my hands, "this man you're with, he's dangerous, isn't he?" I could have lied. Should have lied. Instead, I nodded. "But he treats you well?" Her eyes searched mine, looking for signs of coercion, of fear. "He treats me like I'm precious," I said honestly. "Like I matter." She studied me for a long moment, then squeezed my hands. "Then I won't judge. God knows I made my own choices about who to love. Just be careful. Promise me. I promise. But being careful was becoming increasingly difficult. The deeper I got into Dante's world, the more I saw of both the darkness and the light. I sat in on meetings where he negotiated protection deals that bordered on extortion. I also watched him fund a youth center in his old neighborhood, providing jobs and hope to kids who'd otherwise end up on the wrong side of his business. The Moretti family made 2 more attempts to undermine him, once through a business rival, once through a smear campaign in the press. Dante handled both with ruthless efficiency, and I learned not to ask too many questions about the details, but he never lied to me. When I asked, he told me the truth, no matter how dark. I had them beaten, he said one night, signing in the darkness of our bedroom. We'd started speaking aloud more, my voice and his hands creating a hybrid language between us. Not killed, but hurt badly enough that they won't try again. Does it ever bother you? I signed back. The violence? Yes. His honesty was brutal, but it's necessary. In my world, mercy is weakness. Hesitation is death. I protect what's mine, whatever it takes, and I'm yours. You're mine. He pulled me against him, his hands possessive on my waist. But you're also your own. That's the difference. I would never stop you from leaving if you wanted to. But I'd do anything, to make you want to stay. I stayed. December arrived with the first snow, transforming the estate into something from a winter fairy tale. My mother's surgery was scheduled for the 15th. Dante insisted on the best surgical team, a private recovery suite, round-the-clock nursing care. The morning of the surgery, I was a nervous wreck. Dante found me in the kitchen at 5 a.m., staring at coffee I hadn't drunk, my hands trembling too much to hold the cup steady. He took it from me, set it aside, pulled me into his arms. She'll be fine. He signed against my hair. I have the best team money can buy. They won't fail. You can't control everything, I signed back, my fear making me sharp. Watch me. And somehow, impossibly, he was right. The surgery took 6 hours but went perfectly. Dr. Patterson came out beaming, showing us the scans, explaining how they'd repaired the nerve damage that had caused her chronic pain. She'll need physical therapy, he said. But barring complications, she should have full mobility and minimal pain within 6 months. I collapsed against Dante's chest, sobbing with relief. He held me while I fell apart, his presence solid and unshakable, the foundation I'd built my new life on. Christmas came 2 weeks later. Dante insisted on celebrating at the estate, inviting my mother once she was recovered enough to travel. She arrived in one of his cars, her eyes wide as she took in the mansion, the grounds, the obvious wealth. Jesus, Ella, she whispered. You said he was comfortable. This is obscene. I know. I helped her out of the car, noting how she moved with less pain already. Her steps more confident. But it's home now. And Dante met us at the door, signing a formal greeting that I translated aloud. My mother studied him with a mother's assessing gaze, looking for the danger she knew was there, the threat to her daughter. What she saw made her expression soften. He looks at you like you hung the moon, she said quietly. He looks at me like I'm real, I corrected. Like I matter. You've always mattered, baby, I know. But with him, I feel it. Dinner was intimate despite the formal dining room. Just the 3 of us and a handful of Dante's most trusted people. He'd arranged for a translator to be present so my mother could communicate with him directly, a courtesy that made her tear up. Thank you, she said through the translator, signing clumsily but earnestly. For taking care of my daughter. For everything. Dante signed back, and I watched my mother's face as the translator spoke his words. Ella saved me before I saved her. I'm the one who should be grateful. After dinner, Dante led me to the library, where a small wrapped box waited under the Christmas tree he'd had installed. It was the only present there. We'd agreed not to exchange gifts, since he'd already given me everything. Open it, he signed. Inside was a ring. Not an engagement ring. We hadn't discussed marriage, both of us content with the commitment we'd already made. This was different. A heavy band of white gold with a single black diamond, elegant and unusual and perfect. It's a promise. He signed as he slipped it onto my right hand. That you'll always have a home with me, that you'll always be protected, that you'll always matter. Tears blurred my vision. Dante. I love you, he interrupted, the signs clear and certain. I should have said it sooner. I've known for months. You're it for me, Ella. The only one. The last one. I love you too. I signed back. The truth of it overwhelming, even though you're terrifying and possessive and probably bad for me. Especially because of those things, he signed with a slight smile. You like the danger. Admit it. And God help me, I did. I'd grown addicted to the edge, to living in both worlds, the legitimate and the criminal, the light and the dark. I'd become someone new in the past 3 months, someone stronger and bolder and unafraid of her own power. Yes, I signed. I like the danger. I like you. Just like? Love, I corrected, pulling him close. I love you. New Year's Eve arrived with a party at the estate, a proper celebration with hundreds of guests from both Dante's worlds. Politicians and criminals, CEOs and enforcers, all moving through the mansion like they belonged together. I wore midnight blue silk, my hair swept up, the black diamond ring catching light as I moved through the crowd. I'd learned to navigate these events, to read the undercurrents and power dynamics, to be Dante's partner in truth as well as name. At 11:30, he found me on the terrace, stealing a moment of quiet before midnight. The city spread below us, lights and life and endless possibility. Happy. He signed. Yes, I signed back, surprised by how much I meant it. Are you? More than I've ever been. He pulled me against him, and we watched the city together. Thank you for taking a chance on a monster. Thank you for seeing me. I signed against his chest, for making me visible. The countdown started inside. 10, 9, 8. Around us, the party surged with anticipation. 7, 6, 5. Dante turned me to face him, his dark eyes holding mine. 4, 3, 2. I love you. He signed as the clock struck midnight. I love you. I signed back as fireworks exploded over the city, painting the sky in gold and silver. He kissed me as the new year began, and I kissed him back with everything I had, all the fear I'd overcome, all the courage I'd found, all the love I'd never expected to feel. 6 months ago, I'd been invisible, grinding myself to dust in a futile effort to survive. Now I stood in the arms of the most dangerous man in the city, wearing silk and diamonds, powerful in my own right. I'd approached his table expecting nothing more than to take an order. Instead, I'd found myself, and I'd found him, Dante Caruso, mob boss and secret philanthropist, monster and savior. The man who'd seen me when I was invisible and made me his equal. The party continued around us, but we stayed on the terrace, wrapped in each other, watching the fireworks paint the sky. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new dangers, new opportunities to navigate the complicated world we'd built together. But tonight, we just held each other and felt the weight of what we'd become, 2 people from different worlds who'd found a way to create their own. What are you thinking? Dante signed eventually, that I should have been more afraid. I signed back honestly, that I should have run. But you didn't. No, I chose you instead. Best decision you ever made. He signed with absolute confidence. Arrogant, I signed, but I was smiling. Accurate, he corrected, echoing our first real conversation. Come inside. I want to dance with you. Inside? He'd arranged for the music to be extra loud, the bass strong enough to feel through the floor. He pulled me onto the makeshift dance floor, his hands on my waist, his body moving against mine in perfect rhythm despite his inability to hear the music, because Dante Caruso didn't need to hear to understand tempo, didn't need sound to feel the beat. He read it in the movements of others, in the vibrations through his feet, in the language of bodies moving together. Just like he'd read me from the very first moment. We danced until dawn, surrounded by his empire and my new life, celebrating everything we'd overcome and everything we'd become. And when the last guest finally left and the sun rose over the valley, Dante took my hand and led me upstairs to our bedroom, to the life we'd built together from courage and desire and love that transcended sound and silence. Welcome home, He signed as we collapsed onto the bed, exhausted and happy. I've been home for months, I signed back, pulling him close. Home is wherever you are. He kissed me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. And I kissed him back, tasting our future, complicated and dangerous and absolutely perfect. I'd walked up to his table when everyone else was too afraid, and he'd given me everything I'd never known to ask for. The deaf Mafia boss and the invisible waitress. The monster and the girl who saw past his darkness. We'd found each other in the chaos, and we'd built something real. Something permanent. Something worth every risk I'd taken. Forever, Dante signed against my lips. Forever, I agreed, and meant it with every fiber of my being. Outside, the world continued, dangerous and uncertain and full of shadows. But here in his arms, I'd found my light, and I was finally, perfectly visible.